In just over 2 weeks, the man who has run BC Ferries for nearly the past 9 years is retiring. The U.S.-born executive was brought in as the BC government moved Ferries out of provincial control, setting up a board of directors to oversee management of the company. It's a deal David Hahn says he couldn't turn down as he began to turn the company around. Tonight, in an exclusive interview with CTV News, he talks about the challenges BC Ferries faces and what prompted him to retire early. CTV's Stephen Andrew joins us now live with more. Stephen?
Andrew, David Hahn has never been afraid to speak his mind, whether it's about the state of the ferry system on Vancouver Island, buying ferries offshore, or his much publicized $1 million salary.
I think the screaming started the day I was hired. It never stopped. So, I mean, it's just another part of the process here. I think people have forgotten how bad it was in 2003.
2003 is when David Hahn took the helm at BC Ferries. He says it was a transportation system rife with problems.
HR committee.
And as he prepares to retire at the end of this year, he believes BC Ferries is in better shape than when he arrived.
I mean, I remember going on a Spirit class vessel and there was sewage coming off the top of by the funnel. And that was accepted. That had been going on for a long time, and I don't understand how anybody put up with it. The washrooms were dirty. The ships were not clean. They left late. Sometimes didn't leave at all because we had mechanical breakdowns.
There was also ongoing labor unrest, a situation he acknowledges was doing the company no favors, and one that had to be resolved with a firm hand.
My perception was that the union ran the company. Both sides had equal roles in it, and we had to build some relationship there that allowed the employees to have some comfort that you know, it wasn't going to be a strike every 3 years.
Hahn says a 9-year agreement and negotiations now underway for another 3 years has helped to bring about labor peace. But even with improvements to the BC Ferries fleet and operations and progress in labor relations, the CEO has maintained a reputation as a lightning rod for criticism. When it came to build new ships, Hahn went offshore to Germany. Critics blasted the CEO for snubbing his nose at the BC shipbuilding industry. He makes no apologies for the move.
I was supportive of the bid for the shipyards here to win the contracts, the federal contracts, which they did, which is great for C-SPAN. But even their own ad said we're going to invest $200 million to rebuild the shipbuilding business in British Columbia. If it existed, you wouldn't have to rebuild it.
And then there's the issue of rising ferry fares and reduced ridership, often tied to his $1 million annual salary. Hahn says rising fuel costs are to blame for increased fares, and the government has known for 2 years something needs to be done.
There's only two people that can pay. It's the government or the ferry user, and the government's policy for the last 9 years has been user pay. It's not David Hahn's policy, it's not BC Ferries' policy, it is the policy of the provincial government, and they're reviewing it now is their option. But to take it back into government will just reopen it up to interference at all levels, which destroyed the company before. It resulted in a $1.1 billion write-off in 2000, I believe it was. Heck, you could have paid my salary for 1,100 years.
But ultimately, perhaps money is what brings about Hahn's early retirement. With global economic uncertainty and a strong Canadian dollar deterring U.S. tourists from using the ferry since 2008, waves of red ink began pounding the company's bottom line. Facing potential losses as high as $40 million this year alone, Hahn believed it was the right time to leave. He says his departure has helped Ferries to cut its losses. But ultimately he's going because he believes he achieved what he came to do. And he dislikes government interference, such as 2 laws that, among other things, limit executive salaries and fare increases.
One piece of legislation I was willing to live with, the second no, and not because of who the premier is or the minister is. It gets back to the fundamental principle of independence for me, and it's a very personal thing. We still have great independence. We still have a lot of latitude to do the right things, but for me, you can't keep going through these bills and still have the company the way that I agreed to run it. Doesn't work for me.
That's typical David Hahn, calling it the way he sees it. And it's also telling Andrew that he's only spoken with Christy Clark a couple of times since she became Premier, but he says he's not reading too much into that. He does acknowledge when she was a radio talk show host in Vancouver, the two had some very heated conversations. Now, tomorrow on CTV News, Hahn talks about the biggest crises of BC Ferries during his time as CEO, and we'll talk about his plans for the future. Andrew?
Looking forward to it. He's certainly an interesting fellow. Thanks, Stephen.
You're welcome.